Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I shall be reviewing the latest episode of The Walking Dead, The Key. As always with these reviews there will be full spoilers for the entire episode throughout, so please don't watch if that will be a problem. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. I don't think anyone will begrudge me when I say that in terms of quality, The Walking Dead is and has been for a long time incredibly inconsistent. Whenever the show seems down and out, a great episode will rise from the ashes and reawaken viewers' waning interest. Similarly, when things seem to be running smoothly with The Walking Dead having a few decent episodes behind it, a random chapter full of incredibly dumb writing and poor character decision making will somehow find its way through production and onto our TV screens. It's this inconsistency that makes me love and hate the show in equal measure, and it's episodes like The Key which help to draw me back into the show after a particularly disappointing instalment. Now I'm not saying this week's entry was phenomenal, there was still a lot that irritated me which I'll get to later, but my god was it an improvement on Dead or Alive or, and for the most part I found myself entertained and engaged with what was happening. The main reason I feel this episode was so much better than the one that preceded it was because its focus was solely on some of the more intriguing members of the cast. Thankfully there was no Tara to be seen, instead Dwight, Simon, Negan and Rick stole the show as well as a new character. I'll start off with discussing Dwight and Simon since I mentioned them first. With the Saviours readying up to head out to Hilltop, Dwight found himself wanting to sneak away to warn Maggie and her people about the oncoming danger. Unfortunately, Simon insisted Dwighty boy take a ride with him, meaning he had to endure a trip sat next to crazy old Simon. And it was during this little road trip that Simon and Dwight engaged in some of the most compelling dialogue I've witnessed for a long time. I mentioned during my review of episode 10 that I could understand Simon's point of view when he pitched the idea to Negan regarding the Saviours leaving the area. And once again I found myself thinking that some of the points he raised this week actually made a lot of sense. In fact, a lot of the issues he brought up are points I found myself mentioning in the past. For instance, I remember saying that I find the fact that Negan seems to keep insisting on giving the surrounding communities chance after chance to fall in line, when it's clear they aren't interested in doing so, to be really naive, and it was nice to see Simon bring this up. He also mentioned that even after all the warning signs the Saviours had given to Rick and his people, even after all the individuals they had killed to make an example, Rick, the King and the Widow still hadn't stood down. Nothing the Saviours do will scare them into submission, and Simon is wise enough to know that Negan's plan of attacking a few members of the Hilltop with walker-infested weapons is not going to make the rest of the group suddenly roll over. It's nice to see a character raising points that I thought about myself, and at least it shows that the writers aren't completely ignoring the fact that Negan's approach at times can seem a bit stupid. There was also some nice dialogue between the two regarding both of them wanting to kill Negan, and I liked the little wry smile Simon cracked when he saw Negan's car be smashed into. Towards the end of the episode, Simon found himself essentially taking charge of the Saviours in Negan's absence, as he and Dwight both staged their own little coup d'etat. Unfortunately for Dwight, this little plan of his and Simon's didn't really work out in his favour, as Simon proclaimed that he was done with sending messages and instructed the Saviours to go to Hilltop and kill everyone. Whoops. I for one am looking forward to seeing how Dwight gets himself out of this messy situation. Maybe he will have to kill Simon and take command of the Saviours himself, or perhaps he will try again to escape and warn the Hilltop that the Saviours are coming. Whatever he does, he needs to do something quick, because if for whatever reason he doesn't manage to warn the Hilltop, then potentially a lot of lives could be lost by the Saviours' assault. And if any of the people at the Hilltop do go on to survive the attack, Dwight certainly would never be welcomed in by them, meaning he'd be stuck once again with the Saviours. However, if he does stay with the Saviours, then I'm sure that Laura, the Saviour who saw him killing his own people, will make a reappearance only to inform them that Dwight's a traitor, which would end up with him getting a much more severe punishment than just having half of his face ironed. His character is definitely set up for an interesting end to the season. Moving away from Dwight and Simon and onto the other inseparable pair this week as we take a glance at Rick and Negan. After listening into the Saviour's conversation over radio, Rick jumps into a car and sets out to find and take down Negan. Although I liked the little chase sequence that followed, as I loved seeing Negan pretty much shit himself as he saw Rick full of rage in his rearview mirror, boy was it over in a flash. I really thought we were in for a decent car chase, but the entire thing ended as soon as it started, with the show skipping to Negan's flipped car on its side, leaving viewers to fill in the gaps. I'm guessing this played out this way due to budget restraints, but it's still disappointing nonetheless. Anyway, Negan did manage to escape his vehicle, only for Rick Grimes to display his typical Stormtrooper-esque accuracy, which only seems to happen every time he is given the chance to kill Negan. I can see why when Rick was repeatedly telling Negan he was going to kill him during the episode The Lost and the Plunderers, Negan nonchalantly replied that he won't, because Rick's aim always turns to crap when Negan is in his sights. Overall, whilst I did find the fight scene that ensued between the pair of them to lack any real tension, simply because I'm so confident that neither of them is going to die, I have to say despite this I was entertained. I mean, it certainly played out better than their confrontation during the season opener and the mid-season finale. I like the fact that Negan even poked fun at the ridiculousness of their encounters by responding to Rick's question regarding whether he will ever die, by replying that he was like a cat. At least The Walking Dead seems to be able to laugh at itself. I also enjoyed the conversation the pair had when they were both searching in the dark trying to find one another. I honestly found it kind of bizarre that Negan was still standing by his rhetoric of the saviors trying to save people, with him blaming Rick for ruining everything. He is clearly deluded if he thinks that what the saviors are doing is noble, and the fact that he even offers Rick a new deal after everything that has happened shows how desperately he still wants to cling to power, even when it's rapidly slipping through his fingers. Of course, it was his mentioning of a deal that led Rick to reveal what happened to the scavengers, and I truly fear for Simon when Negan inevitably catches up to him. Last time we saw Rick and Negan engage in a conversation, Negan was taunting Rick about how bad a father he was and how he had failed Carl and his people. Well, this time around the tables had turned as Rick ridiculed Negan by quite rightly stating that no one was going to save him during his hour of need. Then, in what will probably be one of the most talked about moments of the installment, Rick mocked the saviour leader for caring about no one but himself and his stupid bat, setting it on fire, causing Negan to freak out. At times this episode felt very self-aware, which was refreshing to see, and I'm glad Rick called Lucille out for what it is, a stupid baseball bat. The fight that followed with walkers and a flaming Lucille did make for some fun viewing. As previously mentioned, however, there wasn't much tension as I knew Negan wasn't ever going to die in such an anticlimactic manner by being bitten by a walker. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this after what happened to Carl, but the point I'm trying to make is that even though I didn't really fear for Rick or Negan during their battles this episode, once I was able to get past this and accepted the scenes for what they were, i.e. just dumb fight sequences, I got to say I rather enjoyed them, which may come as a shock to some people, but hey, maybe I was just in the mood for a bit of dumb fun when I watched this episode. The last narrative point I want to talk about involves Maggie, Enid, Rosita and Michonne encountering the new character Georgie. It's been a while since the show has introduced some new blood, so it was a surprise to see a new face appear so late in the season. Admittedly, I'm not too sure about her. At the moment she reminds me too much of Deanna, who I wasn't really a fan of, in that she strikes me as yet another uptight politician, but I'm not going to write her off just yet. The debates had between Maggie and co about whether or not to trust her weren't exactly the most enthralling moments of television, as we've seen this exact kind of conversation play out many times before. However, I do feel like most of the ladies managed to put their points across in a decent way. Well, that is except for Enid. Now I know people may think that I'm picking on her, but I really can't help it as her character's dialogue has been so bad of late. I mean, she has a conversation towards the end of the episode with Michonne in which she confesses to killing the leader of Oceanside, and she says that because of this she is alive and because Carl saved Sadiq he's dead. The thing is, this piece of dialogue makes no sense. Enid isn't alive because she killed Natania, she's alive because Cindy, for some reason unbeknownst to me, decided to let her go even after what she did. Having her try to use this example in an attempt to justify killing people just made me roll my eyes. Please just keep quiet from now on, Enid. Also, Hilda and Gertrude need to keep quiet as well. Okay, I know there isn't anyone called Gertrude on the show, but look, I can't remember the other name of Georgie's guard. Anyway, I just found their bad jokes about made up words to fall completely flat. Maybe that's just me being a miserable sod, but this type of humour just really isn't my thing. Moving on, I like the fact that Georgie handed Maggie schematics for various buildings and architecture before she departed, and although as I said I'm not fully convinced by her character, I do want to see what kind of a larger role she will play in the future. I've seen a lot of talk about her being in the comics, but with me only purchasing The Walking Dead Volume 29 a few days ago, which I will be reviewing on my channel soon, I'm yet to meet her on paper. Finally, before I wrap up, I have no idea how Jadis ran into Negan, but after how good her performance was last time, I'm looking forward to seeing more of her hopefully next week, which isn't something I ever thought I'd say prior to a couple of weeks ago. And I also want to mention I was pleased to see Daryl apologising for Rick for his rashness in trying to destroy Sanctuary, with Rick also acknowledging that perhaps he should have focused more on protecting his own people. Sure, it was only a tiny moment in the episode, but it did make me feel for both of them. So to summarise, as I've said throughout this video, the key is not without its problems. Rick and Negan's amazing talent for not being able to kill one another is bordering on ridiculous, but at least their scenes together this time around were engaging and fun to watch. In addition, Georgie actually gave Maggie something to think about other than what to do with her prisoners, and I'm willing to keep an open mind towards her character and see what she can bring to the table. Dwight and Simon were the standout characters for me, however, with the both of them now in perilous situations come the rest of the season. The key wasn't perfect. Some of the old issues did creep up once again, but all in all I like this installment, and it's got me back on board for the rest of the season. Let's hope next week's entry doesn't throw me off again. So there you have it, that's my review of the latest episode of The Walking Dead. As always, please let me know your thoughts below. Did you enjoy this episode or did you dislike it? As always, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.